On this edition of FedGov Today with Francis Rose, how to get the HR system consolidation right this time.
If you pay for it up front and implement it over years, that's the formula for success. And frankly, that's what we did in DoD.
At the agency level, there are always large components within any agency that could make or break a transition like this.
Ron Sanders and Tracy DeMartini on FedGov Today in just a moment. First, though, a note about the FedGov Today podcast holiday schedule. You'll get a new FedGov Today podcast next Tuesday, right on schedule. Then you'll get the next new show December 30th. And the new year of FedGov Today podcast starts Tuesday, January 6th. You follow the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, on the FedGov Today YouTube channel, or on demand at fedgovtoday.com. The Office of Personnel Management will lead an effort to consolidate all the HR systems across government into one. The director of OPM, Scott Cooper, told you about it on FedGov Today TV this week. Tracy DeMartini's former Chief Human Capital Officer at the IRS and GSA. Ron Sanders is President and CEO of Publica Virtu. He's former Chief Human Capital Officer, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, and former Associate Director at OPM. Friends, welcome. It's great to have both of you on the program. This is what Scott Cooper had to say on FedGov Today TV.
We have just launched an RFP to consolidate all of the HR IT systems across government. So there's about 119 and counting, because there's probably some that we haven't seen, disparate HR IT systems, none of which communicate with one another. So we lack visibility on basic fundamental concepts around organizational charts and things of that sort.
Ron, you have overseen the attempts to do this on at least one occasion that I know of. What's the history of trying to consolidate HR systems across either parts of government or the entire government as a whole? Welcome.
Thanks, Francis. And I will tell you, I applaud Scott Cooper's efforts. And as you and I have been discussing, it's not a new thing. This has been around since before Tracy was born. That is at least 35 years. Francis, you don't know this about me, but I tried to consolidate HR systems in DoD, just DoD, and it was a real headache. We accomplished it. When I was at OPM, we got, and that was 2003, 2004, we got a couple of dozen HR IT systems down to basically two, DoD and its Defense Finance and Accounting Center, Defense Civilian Payroll System, and DCPDS, the Defense Civilian Personnel Data System, on one hand, and the National Finance Center on the other. So this has been around a long time. What I hope Scott Cooper can overcome is the thing that caused us to fail, and that is plain old capital P politics. There is a mafia, for example, in New Orleans. Elected officials, they're all dead now, but I think the mafia lives on, that want to keep NFC alive because it means jobs. And that means all the agencies that use NFC for their personnel stuff will point the finger at NFC and say, we got to keep it because we're different. Same thing within DoD, although I hope DoD is more monolithic these days than it was before we tried to consolidate. But this has been around for a long, long, long time. I hope Scott Cooper is successful. I do worry a little bit about identifying a single vendor for this. I would rather see OPM set requirements and say to any vendor, if you want to invest and you want to compete, you can, because I think that's what leads to innovation. Competition equals innovation. But be that as it may, this problem has been around a while, and I applaud somebody trying to take it on.
Tracy, welcome. What does this problem that Ron has laid out look like from the perspective of the agency, Chico? Welcome to you too.
Thank you, Francis. And thank you, Ron. It's so good to be paired with you on this podcast. He is absolutely right. You know, what Director Cooper said, I also applaud it. It would be great to have uniformity and systems that talk to each other. But the bottom line is agents or OPM directors come and go, and they have these great ideas, but there is no peace behind it, if you will. The agencies are still left on their own with no requirements. They're making it up as they go along. And they also don't have the required funding. So I hope what Mr. Cooper can do while he sits in the seat is see this to completion. because there have been so many attempts to do this under both Democrats and Republicans. And the HR offices, I do think, across the government would like to see uniformity, and they're waiting for OPM to set those directions. But more importantly, they want to be part of the solution. So I think OPM needs to also listen to the agencies, because this is bigger than just Title V. We have to think about all of the other federal human capital requirements that, say, touch our friends at the VA, Title 10, Title 38, our law enforcement. There are so many nuances that make the general having one system and having one system in place, it's not as easy as it sounds in the memo that they have put out. I think every human capital officer, past and present, again, would be getting behind this, but this is not new. We already knew these problems are existing, and the issue is lack of desire to stand up to the political winds on the Hill, having that uniformity, actually taking the time to invest in writing requirements, and then, of course, holding our vendors accountable to make sure they meet what we need, and making sure there's constantly a stream of money to deal with the operations and maintenance.
One of the things that I think is encouraging about that, the money idea, Tracy, I asked Scott about that, and he said that there's that OMB is putting money into their fiscal 26 and 27 requests. So it's not just the 1 year funding that we see having caused so much trouble for so many IT projects across the government over the years.
I do think that's been one of the problems, and you're seeing this in other areas as well. Our air traffic control system, for example, is yet another, and frankly, lives are at stake with that one. It takes too long to buy and implement technology in the federal government. There are too many rules and regulations. We need to loosen up because technology is going to move out, and by the time we implement something in the federal government, it's years obsolete. And that goes to what Scott Cooper is trying to do. So again, the fact that he's issued a memo directing this and that he's got OPM and OMB behind him with money, that's a good thing. And he's got what we did not have when I was in the chair at OPM. We did not have a compliant, silent Congress. Mm-hmm. And he does. Whether you like it or not, generally, his Congress is compliant. The New Orleans mafia has been silent, and he may just pull this off. Who knows?
You know, the hairs on the back of my neck always go up when someone mentions OMB in the process, because I feel like for years they've been a huge impediment for OPM and human capital offices across the government actually getting anything done. Because the fact of the matter is OMB does not have any line of sight in how these systems work, and they don't have boots on the ground operations experience. So I would like to see OPM take the strong lead. And again, if they have the support of OMB for the funding, I would like to see it actually be beyond 2 years, because I think that's even cutting it close. I hope that they're able to lay such a strong groundwork that when we do see another change of administration, the work will be so far along, we just keep going. But I think, you know, one of the things I always say is the government's really good about getting in its own way. So let OPM do this. Let there be directives that then have follow through. And to Ron's point, it's not just, you know, the mafias of NFC or DFAS or IBC, but, you know, at the agency level, there are always large components within any agency that could make or break a transition like this. Having come from the IRS, we were that for Treasury, and it's Forest Service over at USDA. There's large interior, it's the Park Service. They have to be brought in line to understand these decisions are going to be made at the department level, and they're going to flow down to all the bureaus.
So that's another thing then maybe that I take a little bit of encouragement from in the way that Scott framed this, Tracy, because I asked him, is this going to be a shared service that OPM provides to agencies? And he said, yes, it's going to be a shared service, but it's going to be mandatory. And the money, why do you laugh when I say that, Ron?
Well, look, I just wish him, I wish him luck, because as Tracy said, you do have to contend with politics that frankly don't respect functional requirements. That's the way our system was built. And I do think the fact that this administration has a compliant Congress is going to help. But at the end of the day, he's still going to have to do this. And I do think, however, that the solution is possible, that he can create a core system, as long as he can get over the warlords in every agency, and Tracy's done a good job identifying them. As long as he can get by all of those who say, "But we're different. We need to customize things." If they need to, let them pay for it. But as long as OMB is going to pay for a core system, and there is savings to be had by creating a core system, let them do it. And if agencies can find the money to customize small pieces of it, more power to them too.
Tracy, you mentioned writing requirements. From your perspective as a Chico, what needs to be in there and what definitely should not be in there?
Well, I think they need to decide. I mean, my recommendation would be start with the biggest elephant in the room and tackle Title V, but then you have to recognize you have to go back and address the other requirements that fall outside of Title V to capture the entire government ecosystem. I also think they need to recognize there is a relationship at the agency level between the Chicos and the CIOs. They have to be driving this from their perspective, making sure that the subject matter experts are there. And I really like how Ron framed it. It's going to be a core system that OPM is setting up. And if the agencies want to do anything above and beyond that, they can then internally discuss what those additional requirements are and pay for them and continue to pay for their development and updates. But this is why I think also the Chico Council needs to be really at the forefront of this. You have all of the career experienced human capital experts sitting around the table that should understand there are more commonalities than not. And this is really going to drive efficiency across the spectrum when you look at things like what we're dealing with now, massive retirements. And I think one of the biggest impediments are because the systems are so disjointed, not connected, many people are still cleaning up service histories and trying to figure out if records are complete. If Mr. Cooper can get this pulled off, which again, it's clear Ron and I are cheering for him, but you have to build that trust and relationship with the customers that will be using it and make sure they at least have a voice at the table. Because instead of just assuming they're going to be naysayers, they may point out potential problems that will actually help implement it better and faster and stronger if they can be identified up front.
But Tracy, I'll push back on that. Unless it's changed dramatically, the career chief human capital officers in government will come to that table and say, but we're different. We need our own system. And that's what's led to the current situation where there are multiple systems all doing the same thing. Quick anecdote, Francis. When I retired from the CIA asked me, Ron Sanders, whether I had been using an alias in my other civil service jobs because they could not find me in their system. That's retirement. I worked in 5 or 6 different agencies. That should have followed me around. It should have been seamless. It was not. Exactly. It's still not. And with all due respect to Tracy, I do think the Career Chico Council is going to say, but we're different. We need our own systems. That's where Scott Cooper, I think, has the advantage of being at the apex of a chain of command where he can order agencies to fall in line and minimize those differences. I don't think you can eliminate them, but you can minimize them. And I think it's going to take political appointees working with Chicos, but it's going to take political appointees to drive this home.
Well, that's exactly why that word mandatory stood out to me as far as how this is going to be presented to agencies. Tracy, this is obviously going to be a multi-year effort. As I mentioned earlier, he says OMB is putting money in the fiscal 26 request and the fiscal 27 request to make this happen, not just at the OMB level, not just at the OPM level, but for the agencies too. Given the fact that this will take a number of years, what are the markers from a Chico perspective to look at every 6 months or every quarter to make sure that this is on track the way that the administration and the agencies envision it to be?
Yeah, and one of the things I think, that's a great question, and I would just caution them, you want to be aggressive, but you also want to be reasonable. And that's why I think having a check-in every 6 months on progress, once they understand, as they're writing the requirements, what the end game is, There's one thing that Ron said. I mean, I rarely disagree with Mr. Sanders, but I will say I don't think it is the Chico Council that would be the impediment. When I sat on the council, there was actually a lot of agreement. The Chicos wanted OPM to be more directive because that will help the Chicos do that implementation at the agency level. When the agency secretaries or administrators get involved, they get it in their head that they are special. And of course, the Chicos then are going to pair it with their agency head says. But secretly, they want OPM to take a much stronger role. They want OPM to have that voice at the table. And I think OPM has spent so much time trying to tell agencies, well, you have a say, you can direct this at your level and do what's best for your agency. And while that might sound great in theory, it's led to an unmitigated disaster with disjointed systems, missing records, and just lots more headaches than we need. There's one civilian federal workforce. We should have the records of the employees there and be able to do these transactions at the highest possible level. This is also going to help with data quality. Because to Ron's point, with all these different systems, you have no idea how the data is being entered, what the required fields are. Does the data even get entered the same exact way? That's why we had so many headaches in the last administration when we were trying to figure out, who was actually coming on site and in buildings and monitoring our workforce coming back from COVID. People just were not reporting things the same way. So it did look like a hot mess. And I don't think anyone really trusted the data that was coming out.
But Tracy, let me ask you, do you really think today, in this now third decade of the 21st century, that the government is a one-size-fits-all monolithic system? I think agencies are growing increasingly different. Their missions are different. The workforce we had in DOD was different. In Army, Navy, and Air Force, and the Coast Guard, all differed. Special Operations Command differed. In the intelligence community, we were all different. We had to find common ground, and there is common ground here, but there's also significant and legitimate differences. So I don't think one extreme, that is everybody having their own system, that's not good, nor is the other, in my view, having a single monolithic system. You can have something in between, and I'm here to tell you, at least when I was at OPM, under the EHRI initiative, I won't bore people with the meaning of that acronym. The folks out there will recognize it. We set functional requirements. We at least started down that path. We only got probably 3/4 of the way there, but we started identifying functional requirements that we could lay out and say, if you want to have federal employees in your data system, whether you're an agency or a vendor, you had to meet these requirements. You had to be able to do certain things, including the nirvana of being able to talk to one another. But again, never happened. That's why I hope, beyond hope, that Cooper will be successful. I have passed on the lessons that we so painfully learned when I was at OPM and at DOD. And Francis, while I got the mic, I'll just say, to the extent OMB is willing to pay for this up front, and it will take implementation over years, to be sure. But if you pay for it up front and implement it over years, that's the formula for success. And frankly, that's what we did in DOD. We traded the money for a single HR system in DOD for a 7-year implementation plan that gradually increased servicing ratio and took it out of the blood of personnelists. But that's where it's got to come from in order to pay for the system. End of sermon.
And end of program. We could go on and on debating this all day, but Ron, I'll let you have the last word. Thank you for joining me. Tracy, you too. It's great to have both of you on the show today.
Thank you so much. Always a privilege to be with you and Ron.
Thanks, Francis. And thanks, Tracy.
You can read more about the RFI for the consolidation and find a link to the FedGov Today TV show with Scott Cooper on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Also in that conversation, Director Cooper will tell you about plans for attracting new talent to the federal government, solving the retirement backlog, and implementing the schedule formerly known as F. You can watch the show anytime you want on the FedGov Today YouTube channel or at fedgovtoday.com. I'm Francis Rose. I'll talk to you Tuesday. Thanks for listening.